Hello, welcome to another episode of Veterans Talk here on Sparks 1524. I'm Nathaniel Miller. Quick admin note just in case you didn't see my previous episode, which was an episode of The Writer's Craft. For the time being, I'm dropping the schedule for production of my written column and my video episodes to twice a month, to bi-monthly. I am hip deep in editing book 4, Lionfish, book 4 of the Accidental Detective series, and I'm also starting to work on book 5 while starting to work on an audiobook version of book 1. So with all that in the mix, at the moment I'm kind of swamped and I don't want to just crank out a quick column and video that are crap. I have professional standards, so please bear with me, but I will be doing it bi-weekly. Now, moving on to this episode of Veterans Talk, known as the Trauma Olympics. So what are the Trauma Olympics? Say you walk into an emergency room. You've got a broken arm, and it's broken. Bone is sticking out, blood's dripping. You got it in a temporary sling, and you walk in. I need help. The emergency room is full of people, of other patients that all have broken legs. The emergency room staff looks at you, says, "Oh, you don't have a real injury. We're taking care of the real injuries, the legs here. You just go get over it." Now, people with broken legs clearly have a real problem because you can't even get around. You have no mobility without assistance. That's real. But somebody with a broken arm is clearly also in need of assistance. If I had that broken arm, I may be able to walk, I may be able to work one-handed, but I'm in pain, I'm suffering, in my case, I got the bone sticking out and bleeding. I'm hurt, I'm injured, I'm traumatized, I need help. I may not need the same level of help as somebody with a broken leg who can't even walk, but I need help. That's the Trauma Olympics. Being told that your injury, your trauma doesn't qualify you because you're not a real trauma patient. I have never been a combat vet. I was actually supposed to go to Iraq in 07, and 4 days before I was on the airplane, that mission got canceled. That's a story for another time. But I did try to go. However, I didn't. So I have never been directly shot at. But I have been the victim of a workplace assault 3 times. The first time my senior chief was complicit. The next 2 times, my chiefs actually did it. I survived a natural disaster when a typhoon on Guam literally demolished the building I was sheltering in. I survived a terrorist incident. I was in the Washington metro area in 2002 when the Beltway snipers were shooting everybody. And that's just a few things I've been through on the bad side. Now, clearly I have a very good life. I'm an independent novelist now. I have a wonderful little home, a great studio I get to work out of. But I still got things that are and I don't want that. Something traumatic happens. And by traumatic, I kind of mean what most people would think. Something is life-threatening, life-altering, either because it causes permanent physical injury and disability or severe emotional, psychological injury that might lead to permanent disability. I'm not talking about somebody saying, "Oh, I have PTSD because my professors in college were mean and they graded me hard." I have seen that in the Navy. I have seen young sailors whine they have PTSD because their college professors were tough professors. That's not PTSD. That's not trauma. Also, I have absolutely no heartburn if a veterans group is specifically set up for combat veterans. That's a set of experiences I never had, but that leave a certain mark. And one of the best communities for combat veterans is to talk to other combat veterans. I'm a veteran. I suffered 3 physical assaults, but I would never walk in and try and take a seat in a group for sexual assault victims because, again, that's a very specific experience I wasn't part of. But that doesn't mean my trauma was any less, and that's what I've been running into for a lot of years. Started in 2016, I was still active duty, but I realized I had a lot of baggage, and I needed help getting rid of it. And I needed more help than just one-on-one counseling because you can only go so far there before you need to be in a community. Started reaching out to veterans organizations and started getting told, "Oh, you're not a combat vet?" Oh, basically, I got told, "You're the wrong kind of vet. You don't have real trauma," which is bullshit. Now, one of the myths about getting over trauma is that you get over it, pass it, it's done. It's not, for the simple fact it's part of your story. It's part of your life story. It never goes away because it's part of your story. But guess what? Nothing we experience actually ever goes away. It's all part of our story, the good and the bad, the beautiful and the ugly. Getting over trauma, what it means is processing through those memories, those feelings, especially the ones of threat to your very being, and not making them magically go away. It's never going to happen. But instead of having something tight around your neck that you're dragging, they become like the books in a library. Those books are always in my library, but they're on the shelf in order. If I want to look at one, I go get it and look at it. When I'm done with it, I put it back. That's the best analogy I can come up with for getting over trauma is you're not getting over it and making it go away. It's still there. But you're able to process it and file it into your memory, the library of your memory where it's supposed to go. So it's not dragging you all the time. But like the man with the broken arm being told because I don't have a broken leg, I need to get out of the emergency room. I've been shafted a lot. And I am very bitter about it. I'm meant that right now. I'm very bitter and resentful, and I don't like that because those are corrosive. Also, I recognize a lot of people that shafted me were very well-meaning people. They really wanted to help veterans, but they were focused on only combat veterans and ignored the fact that the rest of us can be traumatized by things and need help. Hence the term Trauma Olympics. The Trauma Olympics do not exist. We don't get points for trauma A as opposed to trauma B. Now, we do live in a culture that glorifies victimhood because victimhood's attractive. If you're perpetually a victim, you get attention, you get care, you get special treatment, and you also get a lot of passes for bad behavior. And as a man who's wrestled with anxiety and depression for years, I have a suicide attempt in my past while I was on active duty. I actually used to burn myself with chemically, never with fire. I honestly could never handle fire. But I'm not a victim. Yes, I suffered 3 workplace assaults, but I refuse to be a victim. I want to go on living and I want to be free. But I also know I need help, hence being in counseling help, still seeking a community. And now doing this, starting to address openly the fact that we should never take away the support for our combat veterans, our brothers and sisters that got shot at. They need that support. Never denigrate sexual assault victims. Our sisters and brothers who've been violated that way need that support. But that doesn't mean the rest of us also don't need support and don't deserve it. So number one, if you're a victim of trauma, but like me, you've been shafted by veterans organizations because you're the wrong kind of veteran, don't give up. Advocate for yourself when no one else is. It sucks to have to do that. Trust me, I know. But there's a lot of things in life that are not right, not fair, but are unfortunately just reality. And this is just reality. So I can either be a victim and whine and not do anything, except cloak myself in the celebrity of victim status, or I can keep putting one foot forward in front of the other while advocating for myself until I do find a group that will help. Now, the VA gets a bad rap, and it deserves it a lot. Even in my case, VA in Washington State threatened my life by screwing up my meds at one point. But the VA here in Pensacola, while there have been some hijinks that I'll talk about another time, overall they've been good. In fact, I have a counselor, a great psychiatrist who handles the head meds, and a counselor who is herself an old flight line rat. She was an Air Force airman. I was Navy, but I'm an Airedale. She was an Airedale, so we can talk flight line. It's awesome. She and my psychiatrist both independently use the term trauma Olympics to denigrate this poo-pooing and dismissing of people because they're not the right kind of trauma. And I appreciate that. She's actually gotten me scheduled to screen with a trauma support group. And if that's not the right fit for me and me for it, then there's some other resources she has. So these years of advocating for myself and being an obstinate son of a bitch and not giving up might be paying off. You're not alone, however, if you're not finding that just yet. If you are struggling with thoughts of suicide or self-harm, call the Veterans Crisis Line. It's up here on the screen. It's also linked below in the description. I've called them twice in my life, both times after I retired. And I don't want to be dramatic, say it saved my life, but they helped a lot and got me off the proverbial ledge. Another great group that I found after I got here to Pensacola is called Stop Soldier Suicide, and their number is also here on the screen. Now, despite the name Stop Soldier Suicide, they serve all veterans. Don't give up. The future is yours, and it might be hard to get there, but the Trauma Olympics, don't succumb to being beat down if you've been struggling with that the way I have. Now, if you would like to leave a comment, if you have another national or regional level group you'd like to suggest to me, leave me a comment here or check out my written column, which is down below, and let me know there, and I'll check the group out. And if I'm comfortable with them, I'll start adding them when I do mental health columns and videos or episodes here for Veterans Talk. Excuse me. I will be more than happy to start listing them along with Veterans Crisis Line and Stop Soldier Suicide. I'm not trying to start an internet group here. I don't want to become the guru of some, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever self-help group. But I'm a veteran, just like you. We stick together. We survived active duty because we stuck together. One last story before I close off here. This is the first time I got a hint that it's okay to be hurt and injured and have to deal with it if it's not combat. My first deployment, I was with VF 213 and 9/11 happened. We were deployed on board USS Carl Vinson. We were out at sea heading to the Arabian Gulf when 9/11 happened. We launched the first strikes of Enduring Freedom the night of October 7th. Well, a few weeks later, it was evening time. We went into we went into panic mode because there was a projectile coming at Carl Vinson directly. No signal, nothing. We were clearing the flight deck, starting to button up the ship. The ship was going to start maneuvering. The overhead patrol was to go find it. But for about 5 minutes, we thought we were going to get hit by a missile. Turns out it was one of our own F-18s coming back. It was broke. It had suffered a series of short circuits like you'd see in a movie that you wouldn't believe, but the author needs to happen so that the plot can happen. This plane had suffered that. The only thing the pilot had left actually was physical control of the aircraft. Radar gone, radio gone, everything was gone. It was ridiculous. That led me to start having nightmares for years. And I never talked to anybody because it was a false alarm. And how stupid was I? How silly was I? How much of a little pansy was I to be bothered by something that wasn't even real? And yes, I had a few people tell me that early on. But I got to a point where I couldn't even go to a movie theater because I couldn't stand to be enclosed in a dark space with all these people around. And yeah, there's exits, but they're far away. I just couldn't stand it. So flash forward to 2004. I'm on Guam running at the photo lab. Base historian retired, and I wound up with the keys to the base museum. So anytime there's a DV, distinguished visitor, who wanted to visit the museum, I got called. It was awesome. We had a lot of veterans going through the island, heading to Saipan, Tinian, and the other islands of the Pacific for the various World War II 60th anniversary commemorations. And had this one old Marine that wanted to see the museum because he had a several-hour layover before his flight to Saipan. So I get the phone call, hey, PH2 Miller, are you busy? No, I'm not. Hey, so-and-so wants to go to the museum. By the way, I'm not telling you his name specifically, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes. So we're walking around the museum. I'm talking about the different artifacts, things I know. And I asked him, was he on Guam? He said, no, he came through Guam at one point, but he was all Saipan, Tinian, and other islands. He could remember all of them. But he told me the first time he remembered getting hurt, he said, I think I got wounded 3 times. The first time he got shot through the heel, patched up by the corpsman, back on patrol 24 hours later. Second time, he couldn't quite remember. He said he think it was a minor shrapnel. It might have been a bullet, but it was minor. And again, patched up 24 hours later, back on patrol. One night on a supposedly secure island, he and his buddy were asleep on the beach. They were not on patrol. They weren't sleeping on duty. He was there trying to rack out, excuse me. What woke him up was the gunshot killing his friend. Japanese soldier had snuck out of the bush and popped his friend at point blank range. The only reason this gentleman was alive was he got his own handgun up and killed the Japanese soldier before he could get shot. I'm not done yet. One more. The wound that took this Marine out of the war, he got a piece of shrapnel right through the femur, and it took an inch off of his femur. That's a freaking huge bone. You break that bone, that's huge. He spent the rest of his life with a lift in his shoe because his right leg was an inch shorter than his left leg. He was wearing typical old man clothes. Polo shirt tucked into his pants pulled up a little high. There's those kind of pastel blue pants, nice sneakers with white socks pulled all the way up to the knees. Just as stereotypical as you could be. And I'm sitting there in my ice cream suit, because this was the days we had that white uniform with the button-up shirt, white pants. I hated that uniform. You sneezed 2 miles away, that uniform got dirty. But it was one of the uniforms we got made fun of the most, especially by Marines, the ice cream man suit. So I'm wearing that, talking to an old Marine who's a combat veteran, wounded at least 3 times. And he's telling me about the leg injury, and he shows me the scars, and he kind of suddenly sputters out. And by the look on his face and the way he sputtered out, I realized he's never talked about this shit before. He's never talked about this to anybody. Here he's spilling all of this to a little stupid skinny, yeah, I used to be skinny sailor in an ice cream suit. Well, smart enough not to press. But then he asked me about my combat experience, and I mentioned having been on Carl Vinson with VF-213, working on F-14s, et cetera, et cetera. And he asked me, did anything actually happen to us? Did we get shot at or whatever? Because it's a war zone. And I started to say no, but I kind of hesitated. He's like, well, what happened? And the story about that F-18 coming back, well, we thought it was a missile for a few minutes, spilled out. And I was feeling so humiliated. Here I am, this stupid skinny sailor who got scared by an airplane with a broken radio, talking to a Marine who's a legit war hero. He stopped me. He said, no, son, stop. If it happened, it happened. It's going to stay with you. You just got to learn to live with it. It's going to stay with you. I never had another nightmare after that because a fellow veteran, a member of the larger veteran community, looked me in the eye and said, your trauma was real. He didn't tell me to keep wallowing in it. He said I have to learn to live with it, which I did. But it was an eye-opening lesson in not denigrating other veterans who have suffered real trauma. And again, not a little finger cut, not a superior who was nasty but not abusive. We're talking real trauma. Not minimizing that. And also, before making a judgment about somebody else's behavior, whether they're wallowing in pity or they really went through something, listening to the whole story to find out. That veteran, and again, I'm not going to, forgive me for not giving you his name, but I do have you've seen the photo of him and I together. And I want to keep his name off because it was private. In some ways, that meeting has helped me get through a lot of the shafting I've gotten by other veterans organizations that told me I'm not a real veteran. Or I don't have real trauma. If it happened to you, it happened. It's going to stay with you. It stays with me. We have to learn to live with it and move forward. And to do that, we use a community. So again, if you are suffering and struggling with thoughts of self-harm, call the Veterans Crisis Line. Just put this on pause and go call. If you're wrestling, but you're not in immediate danger, try Stop Soldier Suicide. Very good organization. They tailored a program. It was a very short-term program I was on with them, but it was exactly what I needed and got me through that rough period. If you know of any others, through the comments here or on my written blog, which is linked below, please let me know. I'll check them out and start adding. And if they're good organizations, I'm comfortable with them, I'll start adding to the litany of resources I offer when I do veterans talks or mental health talks. Please feel free to share this. If you like my ongoing programming, please hit that little subscribe button and that little red bell if you want to get notified whenever I do drop a new episode. Please hit that little bell. Appreciate your time, especially if you did not enjoy this video. I hope you have a great day, have a great weekend, and remember, until we meet here again, always go and do some great things.